Here's what credible news sources and official statements show about the New Mexico investigation into allegations of buried bodies at Jeffrey Epstein's former ranch, often called Zorro Ranch, based on newly released files from the U.S. Department of Justice. Scripps News. 1. New criminal investigation launched. The New Mexico Department of Justice has reopened a criminal investigation into Epstein's former Zorro Ranch after reviewing information recently made public from the U.S. Department of Justice's released FBI files. The probe had been closed in 2019 but was restarted because the newly released documents contain new information that state prosecutors believe warrants further examination. The ranch is located about 30 miles south of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and was owned by Epstein from 1993 until his death in 2019. 2. Burials. Allegation from an anonymous email. The investigation in New Mexico was triggered in part by an anonymous email from 2019 that surfaced in the newly released DOJ files. According to reporting, the email claimed that 2 foreign girls were killed and buried in the hills outside Epstein's ranch. The sender claimed to be a former staffer at the ranch and alleged the girls died from strangulation during rough fetish sex and were buried on orders of Jeffrey Epstein and an associate. The email also said the sender had additional material, allegedly videos, though that has not been independently validated. State law enforcement's role. New Mexico's Attorney General, Raul Torres, ordered the reopened criminal probe. State prosecutors intend to seek full access to unredacted federal documents and work with other law enforcement partners. The state is also establishing a Truth Commission, a legislative committee with subpoena power, to investigate what happened at the ranch over decades and whether authorities missed evidence or failed to act previously. What the allegations are and are not, what the claim says. An email, anonymous, unverified, alleges 2 girls were buried near the ranch. What's not confirmed yet, no evidence has emerged publicly that bodies have actually been found. Law enforcement has not disclosed any forensic confirmation or discoveries of graves or human remains. The allegations remain unverified claims at this stage. 5. Investigation status. The New Mexico investigation is ongoing. Authorities are reviewing newly released FBI DOJ documents that mention these allegations, seeking cooperation from federal officials for more complete records, conducting criminal and legislative investigations in parallel. Bottom line, New Mexico has officially reopened a criminal investigation into Jeffrey Epstein's Zorro Ranch, in part due to an allegation contained in a redacted email released in the DOJ files that 2 girls may have been buried near the property. This claim comes from an anonymous source. Here's the actual excerpt from the released Epstein documents that's prompting the renewed investigation into Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, verbatim as reported in credible news coverage of the Department of Justice's release. According to a redacted 2019 email that was included in the government's release of Epstein-related records, the email said, paraphrased from the document text reported by Reuters and other news outlets, open quote, 2 foreign girls were buried somewhere in the hills outside the Zorro Ranch, and they had died by strangulation during rough fetish sex. The email also said the information, including the location of the bodies and alleged videos of sexual abuse, was being offered in exchange for 1 Bitcoin. The sender claimed to be a former Zorro Ranch employee. Here's the relevant part of how the text appears in the summary of the released document, straight from credible reporting on the files. Close quote. The redacted email said 2 foreign girls had been buried on Epstein's orders somewhere in the hills outside the Zorro, and that the 2 had died by strangulation during rough fetish sex. Who sent that email, according to the documents? The email was sent in 2019 to Eddie Aragon, a New Mexico radio host and former mayoral candidate. The sender claimed to be a former Zorro Ranch staff member who had been there and seen it all. The document does not publicly show the name or real identity of the sender. It was an anonymous or encrypted email. What the document does not show. Importantly, the released file is redacted in parts, so you cannot see the full unredacted email in public records. Does not provide evidence that these claims were confirmed by any investigation or forensic evidence. Merely records the existence of the email and what it alleged. Why New Mexico is investigating the New Mexico Department of Justice and lawmakers have reopened inquiries because This allegation was buried in the released files, but never fully examined by authorities in 2019 when it was first reported. The state has now requested an unredacted copy of the email from the US DOJ so they can see the full text, metadata, attachments, and context. Officials are investigating whether there is any actual evidence to support the claim of bodies or buried victims. Legal context. This email is currently an unverified allegation in a released document, not evidence, not a confession, and not a formal finding from investigators. The DOJ itself has warned that some documents in the Epstein file release contain unverified or even false claims.